My male 34 pregnant wife's female 26 male friend male 27 threatened me and told me he loves her. This is going to be a lengthy one. Thank you to everyone who has read this far since I am in desperate need of some assistance. I must first provide some context. My wife and I met on a trip. She is Canadian and I am American. We both maintained a long-distance romance for a few months before reuniting in Houston, Texas. I went to see her there when she was visiting someone. I had a feeling she was the one I wanted to marry. She felt the same way about me. I can't express how beautiful, lovely, giving, compassionate, and big-hearted this lady is. Sometimes I can't believe she's mine. Having said that, I have complete faith in her. She has never given me an excuse not to. Her and I eloped a year ago after living together for a time while she was on a student visa in the United States. She is currently living with me in Colorado. She has a terrific career. I work in law enforcement. We have a lovely dog, and we are expecting a kid. She is 29 weeks pregnant and looking amazing. She's always said she had a pal in Canada whom she met on Tinder years ago. When they met, she found she wasn't as attracted to him as she imagined she would be. So they kept a platonic relationship since he's a lovely person and they loved each other's company. She has attempted to set him up with several of her friends, and he has dated some of them. Overall, it seems to be a good friendship. She has always wanted me to meet him and for him to become a friend of ours since she believes we have a lot in common. I'm not having any problems here yet. He's in the Canadian military, and I have to say, he's a beautiful, fit man. I'm the same way, so it doesn't worry me, but I'm just painting a picture here. He messaged her a few days ago, she claimed, saying he's going to Colorado with some buddies. She asked me eagerly if he could eat supper at our place one evening with us since she hadn't seen him in a few years. I had no objections and consented. He came over one evening and told me, "Duck, this dude is in love with my wife." He and I connected for the most of the evening. He liked supper, and it was a lovely evening until the conclusion. He was quite kind to my wife, but I was trying hard not to let my envy get the better of me. Whenever he flirted with me, my wife would playfully knock it down, and I'd remark something like, "Hey, too far," and he'd come to a halt, chuckle, and apologize. He only felt the baby kick once, which is strange, but whatever. She went to the restroom, and that's when everything went downhill. He essentially told me that I had a great wife, that he sometimes wishes she was his, that he loves her, and that I should take care of her, or else who the hell do you think you are to come into my home and say such to me? He has no knowledge of me or anything about me, and he was dead serious when he said all of this. That pissed me crazy, but I kept my cool and softly instructed him to stop talking right now. Things were tense between him and I since I really wanted to smack this guy in the face, but I kept my cool so as not to upset my wife. "How freaking dare you come into my home and say such to me?" I asked. Anyway, we held our calm and she emerged from the restroom. She could sense the tension since he stood up to go after completing his meal. He stared at me as I thanked her for dinner, embraced her, and told her that if she ever needed anything, she should never hesitate to call him. She was perplexed and began asking both of us what was wrong and what had occurred, as well as why he had left so soon. He stated he had to go, and nothing was wrong with that, but I couldn't quit staring at this jerk. I didn't trust her being alone with him outside as she let him out, so I stood outside the door furious as she said farewell to him. I trust her, not him. Anyway, when we got inside, I informed her what had happened and how I didn't want to see him again. I asked her whether she had emotions for him, and she assured me that she did not. If she didn't trust me, she tossed her phone at me and said I could read their texts. I trust her, but I don't trust him. She was furious at me for causing him to go. Anyway, I did examine her phone to see what their conversations were about. I shouldn't have since she was furious because I didn't trust her. The conversations, which dated back quite some time, were purely platonic on both sides. Nothing to worry about, but this man definitely cares about her. Anyway, you can guarantee she had me sleep on the sofa for rummaging through her phone. I earned it. I trust her. But that night my thinking was clouded by rage. I'm not a tiny man, and he's not either. We're both muscular, and a fight wouldn't look good. I maintained my cool, but I'm also incredibly protective of her. I was completely torn. My wife and I have moved on from it and are doing well again. She stated she won't speak to him again if I don't want to, but she doesn't believe that's fair. We both spoke about the night and have moved on from it. But did I go too far? Is it possible that I'm overreacting to this friendship? I'm at a loss on what to do. Duck. Story 2. My boyfriend makes me want to curl up and cry every time we have a discussion. Advice: hello there. I've been attempting to figure out a strange relationship dynamic that my partner and I have on a weekly to bi-weekly basis. We're 20F and 22M and have just been dating for 6-7 months. We've been living together for almost 2 months, which I know seems like a long time. However, since we are university students in a city suffering from a severe housing crisis, the only alternative choice would have been to become homeless or to discontinue our study. But apart from pragmatic considerations, we both believe it was a fantastic decision. We love each other's company and have a great synergy for everything house-related. We go on really pleasant dates every now and then, enjoy movie nights, restaurants, and so on. While everything else is going swimmingly, we are having a difficult time addressing communication challenges. My partner is a brilliant, sensible, and critical young guy. I like him for it, but when something doesn't instantly make sense to him or contradicts his knowledge/observations, he is easily thrown off. This occurs often because, although he carefully selects his words, I prefer to approach talks instinctively. Because I have ADHD, I often alter words and phrases without realizing it, which obscures their meaning, go off on a tangent that I believe extremely significant and intriguing, while no one else sees the connection, or just neglect to make necessary considerations before speaking anything. Sometimes I agree with him on something but forget to say so, resulting in additional misunderstanding down the line. He's really good at finding flaws and contradictions, so whenever one comes up, he needs to stop the discussion and investigate. As a consequence, he asks a series of questions until he understands, dissecting anything I said, thought, or felt. We often reach a point when he leaves "you must agree to A and B if you agree to X and Y if you don't, you're either lying to me or making a fool of yourself." In most of these circumstances, I am neither. It's simply that I can't articulate myself in a manner that he understands. In these instances, I get really annoyed and unhappy, to the point that I can't think straight because I'm weeping and my chest feels constricted. I know he means no harm with his questioning, but the way he tackles the problem makes me feel extremely unaccepted and alienated, as if everything I say and think is incorrect or faulty, and as if I'm pushed into a corner with nowhere to hide. You see, it has a panicky sense to it. It's quite aggravating since I know he's not trying to be nasty but rather to understand, instead of informing me that he doesn't mean it that way and is simply trying to understand how I arrive to my conclusions. My brain just thinks he doesn't believe the way you see something is acceptable if it's not intrinsically reasonable, which may be true. It gets more tough when he asks what aspect of his behavior bothers me, since my mind is a jumbled mass and it's difficult to define. The man has never raised his voice or his hands in his life, and is typically quite laid back, so he doesn't realize he merely has an offensive way of stating things. Other possible contexts. I become better at dealing with the scenario. I used to simply shut down previously, but I've discovered methods to calm myself down and continue the discussion rather of leaving it, so that's a tiny success. I've never had such a problem with somebody in my life. I used to compete in arguing, so it can't be that I'm afraid of individuals who disagree with me. I discussed this with my therapist in ADHD CBT, concerning difficulty with listening/wording things, and she suggested that my partner could have Asperger's. My lover informed me that he had individuals in his life tell him that every time he talked to them, he made them feel stupid. I honestly believe he isn't trying to be cruel, since he offered to simply stop and ask questions, which I declined because I want to figure things out. Thank you in advance for any advice you may provide. 3. I'd want to find a technique to avoid being wounded and have peaceful talks.